We've talked some about the neuroscience of gaming, we've talked some about emotions, we've talked about a couple of introductory topics around gaming. And what I'd like to talk about now is how you start actually getting control of your gaming, and how it is that you can activate your motivation, you can overcome some of that laziness, you can sort of get your emotions in line. There's some concrete things that you can do to get control of your gaming. And the first of those is to understand that you can't overcome an addiction without a competing interest. If we think a little bit about, so I mostly work with people who have problems with other addictions like alcohol or opiates or things like Xanax or marijuana. And for a lot of them, the substance that they use serves a very important purpose in their life. It helps them manage stress, it helps them kind of decompress a little bit, it helps them manage their negative emotions, and it's really hard to just get them to quit. It's not enough to tell someone, hey, if you keep on drinking, you're gonna get liver cancer and you'll die early, or you'll have an increased risk of heart disease. In order to really get them to stop drinking, and this is especially true, actually less so of alcohol, but the most true of marijuana, you have to help them develop a competing interest. And so what I mean by that is, let's take an example of someone who smokes marijuana. That person is going to be smoking and they feel like marijuana helps them deal with their anxiety. It makes them feel like they're themselves for the first time, like they're not so much in their head, and it makes them feel really good. And so for something that's so awesome, like something that makes you feel comfortable, it's really hard to just give that up. And so in order to help that person give that up, what we have to work on is finding what I call a competing interest. So I'd like to tell you guys kind of a random story. So when I was studying public health, I heard a really interesting story about a real estate development project in New York. And this was kind of in the Upper West Side of New York, like 30 or 40 years ago. There was a real estate developer that wanted to come in and sort of buy up a bunch of property and then turn it into like a high-rise. And so the people who lived in that community didn't want that real estate developer to come in and buy that property. And so what they did is they went to these town council meetings and stuff, and they protested and they said, we don't want that real estate developer to develop this land. We don't want it to happen. We don't want it to happen. We don't want it to happen. And despite all of their protests, the real estate development started moving forward. And then finally, one guy came up with the idea, or a girl, I think actually it was a woman, but one person came up with the idea that instead of saying no to the real estate development, what they started doing is saying, we actually want a park instead. Instead of actually opposing the real estate development, what they did is create some competition. And they said, we want to devote this area of our part of New York City to building a park. And something magical happened when they started advocating for a park instead of trying to block the real estate development. The more that they advocated for the park, it seemed to get traction. And other people in the community were like, wow, wouldn't it be awesome to have a park here instead of a high-rise? And they were able to get a lot more support for it and ended up blocking the real estate development and building a park instead. And so if we look at that story, I mean, it sounds like it's completely unrelated, but I think it speaks to this basic human psychology that in order to block something, you actually have to replace it. You can't just stop it. And so for gamers, the first thing that you guys need to do is come up with a competing interest. So you have to have a reason to not game. And I would argue that most of you guys, when I ask you guys, do you want to stop gaming? You'll say, yes, I want to stop gaming. And I'll ask you, why do you want to stop gaming? And you'll say, well, because I need to get a job, or because I need to move out of the house, or because I'm not moving forward in life. And all of those things are true, but they're not really a competing interest. Getting a job and being financially independent are just things that you want. You don't actually care about them. They don't drive you to do things. They don't affect your behavior. They're just desires. And desires and motivators are actually different things. A competing interest is something that you actually care about. It's like earlier when I was talking about the guy who's smoking. If I want him to stop smoking, I can't tell him about lung cancer. So if I have a guy who's smoking and I try to get him to quit smoking, I say, oh, if you smoke, you're going to get heart disease. You're going to die of a heart attack. You're going to die of a stroke. You're going to get lung cancer. You're going to be wheeling around an oxygen tank. You're not going to be able to breathe. You're not going to be able to climb stairs. And all of those things are absolutely true, and he doesn't want any of those things to happen. But none of that information actually changes his behavior. He doesn't actually stop smoking, irrespective of how much he wants to avoid lung cancer. What gets that person to change is actually something that they care about, a real competing interest. What I ask that person is, do you ever want to see your daughter get married? Do you want to ever meet your grandkids? Do you want to see your grandkids go to college? Those are things that that person cares about. And those are things that are competing interests. And when you develop a competing interest, that helps you actually fight against the gaming addiction, because then you have something that actually gets lost if you choose to continue gaming. You have a real cost to gaming, whereas right now you don't really have a cost to gaming. Sure, you don't move forward in life, but tomorrow is not going to be any different. You're not going to be out on the street if you play video games all day today. You're not going to die of hunger tomorrow if you play video games all day. You're not going to die alone if you play video games all day. Now, you will die alone if you play video games for the rest of your life, but for tomorrow, there's actually no cost to playing video games all day. And you guys really have to understand that in order for you to stop gaming, there has to be a cost today. There has to be something that you lose today by gaming today. And understanding that requires you to develop a competing interest. And once you develop a competing interest, then you actually have skin in the game. You've kind of gone all in. You're putting chips on the table. You're actually betting something. You have something to lose. And the interesting thing is that once you have something to lose, that's going to change your behavior automatically. If I were to tell you, if you play video games tomorrow, I'm going to shoot you in the face, and here's a handgun, you're not going to play video games tomorrow. You're just not going to do it because it actually has a cost. If I tell you, here's $1,000, if you play World of Warcraft tomorrow, I'm not going to give it to you. But if you don't play World of Warcraft tomorrow, I will give it to you. That person is not going to play World of Warcraft because there's a tangible cost. There's a competing interest. There's something that they actually gain by not gaming. And the subtle problem that gamers face is that they think they have a competing interest, because what they really have is desires. They have a desire. They're like, yeah, I want to be rich. That's like, I want to be rich too. Like, everyone on the street wants to be rich. It doesn't actually cause them to change their behavior. So if you actually want to get control over your gaming, the first thing you need to do is develop a competing interest. And we'll take a short break, but when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about how to go about doing that.